Welcome, brave souls, to a realm where the past refuses to stay buried. Tonight, we delve into the chilling echoes of history, stories that whisper from the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. The story begins on a cold, rainy October evening. I had just moved into an old, creaky house on the outskirts of a small, forgotten town. The house was a relic of the past, with its peeling paint, sagging roof, and windows that seemed to stare out like hollow eyes. It was the kind of place that whispered secrets to those who dared to listen. I had always been drawn to the mysterious, the unexplained, and the eerie, so when I found the listing for the house at a price too good to pass up, I took it as a sign. Little did I know the house had been waiting for me, or perhaps I had been drawn to it. The first few days were uneventful. I spent my time unpacking, cleaning, and trying to make the place feel like home. But there was always this lingering feeling like I was being watched. At first, I chalked it up to the unfamiliar surroundings. The house was old, after all, and old houses have a way of settling, groaning, and creaking in ways that can play tricks on your mind. But as the days turned into weeks, the feeling grew stronger, more persistent. It started with small things. I would hear footsteps in the hallway when I knew I was alone. The sound of faint whispers would drift through the air, just barely audible, like someone was speaking in another room. I would turn, expecting to see someone there, but there was never anyone. At night, I would wake up to the sound of my name being called, soft and distant, as if it were carried on the wind. I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One night, I decided to explore the house more thoroughly. I had avoided the attic and the basement, partly out of laziness and partly out of an unspoken fear. But the whispers were growing louder, more insistent, and I needed answers. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, I made my way to the attic. The stairs groaned under my weight as I climbed, each step feeling heavier than the last. The attic was dark and dusty, filled with old furniture, boxes, and forgotten relics of the past. As I shone my flashlight around, I noticed something strange, a small, ornate box sitting on a wooden table in the corner. It was out of place, too clean, too polished compared to everything else in the room. I approached it cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. When I opened the box, I found a stack of old letters tied together with a faded ribbon. The handwriting was delicate, almost elegant, but the words sent a chill down my spine. They spoke of love, loss, and a tragedy that had occurred in the house many years ago. The letters were signed by a woman named Eleanor, and as I read them, I felt a connection to her, as if her pain had somehow become my own. That night, I had my first vivid dream. I was standing in the house, but it was different, brighter, more alive. I saw a young woman with long, dark hair sitting at a piano, her fingers gliding over the keys as she played a haunting melody. She turned to me, her eyes filled with sorrow, and whispered, "Help me." I woke up in a cold sweat, the echoes of her voice still ringing in my ears. From that moment on, the activity in the house intensified. Doors would slam shut on their own, objects would move inexplicably, and the whispers grew louder, more urgent. I began to feel Eleanor's presence everywhere, as if she were trying to communicate with me, to tell me something important. Determined to uncover the truth, I started researching the history of the house. I visited the local library, scoured old newspapers, and even spoke to some of the town's older residents. What I discovered was both heartbreaking and horrifying. Eleanor had lived in the house in the early 1900s with her husband, Thomas. They were deeply in love, but their happiness was short-lived. Thomas was a jealous man, prone to fits of rage, and one fateful night, in a fit of drunken anger, he accused Eleanor of infidelity. The argument turned violent, and in a moment of blind fury, Thomas killed her. Overcome with guilt, he took his own life shortly after. The house had been abandoned for years, haunted by the tragic events that had unfolded within its walls. As I pieced together the story, I began to understand why Eleanor's spirit was so restless. She was trapped, unable to move on, her soul bound to the place where she had suffered so much. The whispers, the footsteps, the dreams, it was all her, reaching out to me, begging for release. I knew I had to help her. I consulted with a local medium, who advised me to perform a cleansing ritual to help Eleanor find peace. It was a daunting task, but I felt a sense of responsibility, as if I had been chosen to right this wrong. On the night of the ritual, the house was eerily quiet, as if it were holding its breath. I lit candles, burned sage, and recited the words the medium had given me. As I did, I felt a shift in the air, a sense of something lifting, releasing. The whispers grew faint, the footsteps faded, and for the first time in weeks, the house felt still. I like to think that Eleanor found peace that night, that she was finally able to move on. But even now, as I sit here writing this, I can't shake the feeling that she's still with me, watching over me, grateful for what I did. The house is quiet now, but every now and then I hear a faint whisper, a gentle reminder of the ghostly presence that once haunted these walls. And though the past may be disturbing, it's also a part of who I am now. The whispers may have faded, but their echoes will always remain, a testament to the power of love, loss, and the enduring connection between the living and the dead. Months passed after the ritual, and life in the old house settled into a quiet rhythm. The oppressive atmosphere that had once clung to the walls like a shroud was gone, replaced by a sense of calm that I hadn't felt since I first moved in. I began to think that Eleanor's spirit had finally found peace, that the whispers and shadows were nothing more than memories of a disturbing past. But the truth, as I would soon discover, was far more complicated. It started subtly, as these things often do. I would wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I had heard the faint strains of a piano playing. The melody was always the same, haunting, beautiful, and filled with an indescribable sadness. At first, I told myself it was just my imagination, a lingering echo of the dreams I had experienced during the height of the haunting. But as the nights went on, the music grew louder, more distinct, until I could no longer deny that something was happening. One night, unable to ignore the pull any longer, I followed the sound. It led me to the parlor, where an old, dust-covered piano stood in the corner. The keys were moving on their own, as if invisible hands were playing them. My heart raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. This wasn't the same oppressive presence I had felt before. This was different, gentler, almost pleading. "Eleanor," I whispered, my voice trembling. The music stopped abruptly and the room fell silent. For a moment I thought I had imagined it all, but then I felt it, a cold breeze brushing against my skin, carrying with it the faint scent of roses. And then a voice, soft and melodic, filled the air. "Thank you," it said. I spun around, searching for the source of the voice, but there was no one there, yet I could feel her presence, stronger than ever. It was Eleanor, but not as she had been before. There was no sorrow, no anger, just gratitude and a deep, abiding love. Over the next few weeks, strange but beautiful things began to happen in the house. Flowers would appear in vases, fresh and fragrant, even though I hadn't put them there. The air was always filled with the faint scent of roses, and the piano would play softly at night as if Eleanor were serenading me in my sleep. It was as though she was thanking me, showing her appreciation in the only way she could. But as much as I appreciated these gestures, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. Eleanor's presence, though gentle, was still a reminder of the past, of the tragedy that had unfolded within these walls. I began to wonder if she was truly at peace, or if there was something else she needed from me. One evening, as I sat by the fireplace reading, I felt a sudden chill. The room grew darker, and the air became heavy with an unspoken tension. I looked up, and there she was, Eleanor, standing in the corner of the room. She was translucent, her form shimmering like moonlight on water, but her eyes were clear and filled with emotion. "I must show you," she said, her voice echoing in my mind rather than my ears. Before I could respond, the room around me began to change. The walls faded, the furniture dissolved, and I found myself standing in the house as it had been over a century ago. The parlor was alive with activity. A young woman, Eleanor, sat at the piano, her fingers dancing across the keys. A man, Thomas, stood by the window, his face twisted with anger. I watched helplessly as the scene unfolded before me. The argument, the accusations, the violence, it was all there, playing out like a tragic film. I wanted to look away, to close my eyes and block it out, but I couldn't. I was forced to witness the horror, to feel Eleanor's fear and pain as if it were my own. When it was over, I was back in the present, trembling and gasping for breath. Eleanor stood before me, her eyes filled with tears. "He is still here," she whispered. It took me a moment to understand what she meant. Thomas. His spirit had never left the house. While Eleanor had found peace, he remained trapped, his anger and guilt festering like an open wound. And now he was growing stronger, feeding off the energy of the house and the emotions of those who lived within it. I realized then that my work wasn't done. Eleanor had found peace, but Thomas was still a prisoner of his own making. If I didn't do something, the house would never truly be free. With the help of the medium, I prepared for another ritual, this one more intense than the last. We gathered candles, crystals, and herbs, creating a circle of protection in the parlor. As we began the ritual, the air grew thick with tension, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Shadows danced on the walls, and the whispers returned, louder and more menacing than ever. Thomas's spirit appeared, his form dark and twisted, his eyes burning with rage. He lashed out, trying to break the circle, but we held firm, chanting the words of the ritual with unwavering determination. Slowly, his form began to dissolve, his anger giving way to sorrow, his rage to regret. "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." And then he was gone. The house fell silent, the air warm and still. Eleanor appeared one last time, her form radiant and peaceful. She smiled at me, her eyes filled with gratitude, and then she too faded away. Since that night, the house has been quiet. The whispers have stopped, the shadows have vanished, and the piano remains still. But every now and then, I catch the faint scent of roses, a gentle reminder that Eleanor's spirit is at peace. The past may be disturbing, but it is also a part of who we are. The whispers may have faded, but their echoes will always remain. A testament to the power of love, forgiveness, and the enduring connection between the living and the dead. And though the house is quiet now, I know that it will always hold the memories of those who came before, their stories woven into its very walls. As for me, I have found a strange sense of purpose in all of this. I am no longer just a resident of this old house. I am its keeper, its guardian. And though the whispers may be gone, I will always listen, always remember, and always honor the ghosts of the past. Thank you for venturing into the unknown with us. If these whispers intrigued you, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more spine-chilling stories. Until next time, remember, the past is never truly gone.